So I would love to know, what privilege do you have that you refuse to feel guilty about?
That I refuse to feel guilty about.
That's
I
right.
refuse to feel guilty about being smart.
Listen,
'Cause
say more about that, please. Welcome back to another episode of Guilty Privilege. My name is Amber Cabral, and today I have the privilege of hosting Mr. Shawn Pean. He is the founder of June 79, and trust me, you definitely want to get out there and get this look. We're going to talk to him about his brand, as well as the work he's done with several other brands in the fashion industry, and the impact of having equity in design and branding. Hey, Shawn.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Listen, let me tell you how much I love you.
Aw.
I have been telling people about my podcast coming up, and I was like, I am so excited to talk to Shawn because you are like my brother from another mother.
This is true.
We have such an amazing friendship, and it's not been that long.
It has not.
But listen.
But impactful. Very impactful.
Super impactful.
Yeah.
We give each other great feedback.
Absolutely.
We got a lot of laughs.
Yep.
So I'm hoping we're going to bring that energy to this talk.
Why wouldn't we?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm ready.
All
okay.
right.
So I'm going to start with a little bit of serious stuff first.
Okay.
The coughing is not the serious stuff. All right. So I'm going to start with some serious stuff first. There are not a lot of visible, successful, heterosexual Black men in fashion. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would love to know, because you are a Black man in fashion and you've been around, okay?
For a long time.
Yes. And you have been with some really fantastic companies.
Yeah.
All right. Some great brands. I would love to know what it has been like, living in your identity in that space, because it's not necessarily one that's well represented.
It is not well represented. Mm-hmm. You are right. There's not many of us. But for me, it's... I started off just being my authentic self, mm-hmm. right? And I think that as a heterosexual Black male, that it has its positives and it has its negatives. And so I've had to adjust certain parts, throughout my career, how I communicate. I'm a kid from Brooklyn. So for me, it's, I'm going to be very direct with a little bit of accents and yous and theirs and, all of that. So, a lot of that had to shift over time. But for me, I think once I understood the landscape that I was in, and in fashion, where there's a huge female presence, there's a huge LGBTQ presence within mm-hmm. our fashion industry, and for me, I had to make sure that people understood who I am mm-hmm. When I step into the room, and so I think. It presents challenges and it presents opportunities. The opportunities are that people understand that what you're saying is because you took time to understand it. Yeah. And so that's something that I've always done in my career. I think the opportunities within that are that not everyone wants to receive it. Yes. I think, being that voice in the room, not everyone appreciates it because they don't understand my point of view. So I found myself getting challenged a lot in subject matters in which I knew and felt that I was the expert because mm-hmm. I took time to delve into the business and or speak to businesses in a way and from a point of view that's different than theirs. Yeah. And people challenge that. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, people fear what they don't understand. Absolutely. In most cases, actually. Absolutely. In every case, people fear what they don't understand. And I don't think I was understood when I came in this industry with my point of view, which to me is a balance of, rationality, a balance of creativity, and a balance of business acumen. I understood the business, but I, very early on, I like to wear color. Yeah. As I'm wearing color today, but that was big. And back then it was like, oh, so you must be gay. I was like, no, I'm very much a heterosexual male, but I like wearing color. Right. That doesn't put me into this bucket. Oh, but you're in fashion. And And so I, that was a lot. That happened a lot throughout my career. And, it was just navigating it one day at a time, mm-hmm. And one of the things for me, I think that led to my success. I never took anything personal.
Oh, I love that.
I never took anything personal. At the end of the day, business was business. So if someone came at me a certain way, you shake it off, and then you manage it from a business perspective.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, I don't have the same leeway as some of my counterparts. When you're the only person of color in the
That's
room,
right.
you don't have my set of challenges are very different.
Mm-hmm. Your risk is greater.
My risk was far greater.
Right.
And I understood that early on, because not just for me, but for others that look like me.
Mm-hmm.
What tends to happen if you're Black and in this industry is that people categorize you. So if I, who am on the business side, a decision maker, if I mess up, usually it's like, well, see, we can't bring Black people in because of this. It wasn't my individual mistake.
Right.
Collectively,
right.
it now
it
becomes
is all of our mistakes.
All of our mistakes.
That's right.
And so witnessing that and seeing that, it, I had to then operate at a very high level.
Yeah.
And just make sure that when I came in buttoned up, I knew what I was talking about. And I became a student of this industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's what's led me down the path that I am now.
Yeah. So you said something about challenges, because when we first met, I definitely challenged you.
You did. Our first conversation.
That's right. So you want to talk about that conversation so the people can know that I challenge everybody, just so you know.
You do challenge everybody. But I think at the time you challenged me in a way that it caught me off guard, because I thought I was speaking and helping a situation by lending my voice.
Mm-hmm.
But really what you helped me understand is that it may have fixed a problem, but it wasn't fixing a pattern.
That's right.
And so that conversation became the reason why we became so cool, Amber.
That's it.
I was like, yo, real recognize real, and you are right. And that's what's up. And you remember I said your voice needs to be heard in every room.
And we are here.
And we are
and we are here.
Right.
So yeah. I really appreciate what you said about, just not feeling like there's a lot of grace, especially being, just in your identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I opened with that question, because I recognize, obviously being a Black woman, there are a lot of rooms, in my corporate career and also as a consultant that have been difficult for me. So I can definitely connect to that. But there are often times I find that I can open some doors.
Yeah.
So have you found that that's been something you've experienced as well? Like, just as a result of, the way that you show up in a space, particularly this space, the fashion space, that you've been able to open some doors. I know the answer to this question, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about it. Yeah,
no, for sure. I've always been about opening doors up for our people. Even when I was on the business side, I always hired people of color, and I made sure that they had an opportunity within at least my teams on my side of the organization. And it's funny, I used to get made fun of it a lot. And I remember my team consisted of 3. It was me plus 3, so it was 4 of us on a buying team. And 3 of us, I hired 2 people of color, and I was, oh, you got United Nations over there.
Wow.
And with the comments that were made. And so, it kind of, you get taken back a little bit. But then I realized that what I was doing was exactly what needed to be done. Because if that's your comment versus are they qualified, are they smart? Like, why you didn't ask me why they came in, or you just assume because you're not used to that. You're not used to seeing, a team within this environment that there's multiple people of color. There's usually just one in the room.
Exactly.
And so I wanted to break that stigma and break that norm. And I've done that throughout my career. And so the challenges will come because I think the eye hasn't adjusted yet.
That's true.
When you look at fashion and when you look at the lower level, if you're looking at it from a triangle perspective, there's tons of people of color, right?
Absolutely.
But as you get further up, there's less roles, senior management roles. There aren't. You'll be hard pressed to find a Black CEO running a fashion organization. Meanwhile, when you look at the customer profile,
absolutely,
we're a strong majority of that, right? In any luxury house, in any classification of business, I think the consumption that people of color have are pretty high. But the decision makers who manage that are not. So not of color.
Right.
And so I think that there's always going to be a disconnect. And it's a shame, but I think, the advancement of our people within this space is huge. And I think there's more voices that need to be heard. And it's funny, I I'm gonna tell you a story because in 2018, I got a Bragg Award, Business Achievement Award, and which for me was a big deal because I don't receive many of them. But Bragg was the first to recognize me as a business leader within this industry, and Bragg has been a very not popular, but they've been a very dominant DEI organization for 40 years. So they started even before the conversations of like 2020
George Floyd set it off.
Before Floyd set it off, Bragg has been around and supporting and mentoring people of color for decades.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking, but I spoke about in my speech all of the people that I've worked with, people of color who have not been recognized.
Right.
That was part of my speech. And I listed off name after name after name. And it's actually the reason I remember it, someone just sent it to me recently, but I went through names of all these people that I worked with and how talented they were. And none of them ever got their just due within our industry. Mm-hmm. There were the 3 names I could rattle off right now should be CEOs and of companies. Yeah. And they would absolutely crush it. But their opportunities just never came about. Yeah. Not because of the work that they put in. They did amazing work. They drove businesses. They far exceeded what was asked of them, and still the opportunity was not given to them. Yeah. And so I think, it's incumbent upon like just me and those in our industry, even though I now kind of laugh because I think a lot of it is lip service. That's just me. But we have to keep pushing that forward.
Hey there. If you're listening and finding value in today's episode and want to add a couple tools to your toolbox, I've written a couple books that you might find useful. My first book, Allies and Advocates, is to help you be able to show up as an ally or an advocate and to help create a more inclusive and equitable culture, whether that's in your own life or in the workplace. My second book is a little different. It's called Say More About That. What Say More About That does is help you to push back, advocate, and actually challenge. It gives you tips, tools, and language to help you navigate difficult discussions, whether that's in your personal space or your workspaces. So if either of these tools sound like they might be useful for you, you can scroll down into the show notes and click the link and get your own copy of either Allies and Advocates or Say More About That. Back to today's episode. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things you said brought a couple things to mind. So one, I do think, going back to what you said earlier about, being the only one in the room and missing the collaborativeness of seeing your identity represented, the impact that representation can make, right? And like wanting that and being deliberate and trying to help create that, whether that was on your team or, how we were thinking about the consumers that you were working with, all of those things about buying for. It almost makes me wonder if, why we see some other things that we don't necessarily want to see that kind of cohesiveness happen. Like I know you and I had a conversation where, shortly after George Floyd, when a lot of the big department stores were trying to figure out how to highlight Black creators, creatives of many different types, right? Clothing, beauty products, et cetera. And there was almost like this section that was just this mashup of things. Yeah. And we were like, no, I agree. Not like that, right? And I wonder how much of things like that happening can feel like to a big brand. This is me trying to give you that sense of inclusiveness. I'm putting you with, there is representation here. When what we're looking for it in is where there's the power, not just where the product rests.
Absolutely. No, but look, I think it's both sides, right? And I think in those cases, the department stores that were saying we're creating an all Black area, who wants to be part of it, weren't necessarily trying to solve a problem. I think that's more forward facing, right? Agreed. We want our customers to see that we're addressing this, right? But that's not addressing the issue. No. At all. And so I was approached about it and I said, no, thank you. Because that's not what I wanted my brand to be about. Right. And it's funny, I think it's about equity, right? And when I first launched my own brand, I got challenged because I had all Black models within my campaign, my first campaign. That. And, I was challenged, why don't you have more diversity? And I said, well, it's about the product. And the person that challenged me would work for a big brand. And I said, when you worked for this brand and they had all white models, did you ask them to bring in a Black one? And he didn't respond. He was like, well, it was different back then. Nothing's changed. It was about the product then, it's about the product now. The eye will adjust. If you're looking at my product and you was like, it's not for me because a black guy's wearing it, then you're like, that's a very short-sighted way of looking at it, right?
Yeah. It's discriminatory, flat out.
It is. But, and I wanted the eye to adjust in that situation, that people can see, 5 black models wearing our product and they're like, wow, they all look great.
Right.
I want to look like that. I want to feel like that.
Right.
Right. Like fashion, the other side of it is that we're invoking emotion within the product, especially in luxury. I think for me, clothing is like consumption, right? No one walks out their house without it.
Yeah.
It's like everyone needs to eat.
Absolutely.
Right. And so just depending on how you either eat McDonald's or you eat Nobu, right? And so based on that, that's how you
shop. High and low it for the week.
But that's how you shop.
Exactly.
Right? Either you're a, I'm a Zara person, or I'm a Cucinelli person, or I'm a Chanel person.
Right.
And that's that's your consumption, right? And you may mix your Nike Tech Fit with the Chanel bag, and that's how you go out grab bagels in the morning. Who knows? But, and to me, that's why fashion plays an integral part in society, culture, but more importantly, how we make people feel. And to me, the biggest call outs are, how are we making people feel, right? And I think that's the old Maya Angelou quote that I've always loved. But I don't think that the powers that be truly understand that.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the biggest disconnect. Like they keep throwing these things at us, but they don't want to be connected to us.
Yeah, I want to talk about that for sure. I think to that end, I've had a number of conversations with folks that work in fashion, the folks that I know that, you and I both have talked to, where it feels like there is a conversation that is happening in front of the camera and then also a conversation that's happening separately. And so you get these kind of, these side remarks that are like, but these folks, just need so many things. And how am I supposed to help them? And instead of having the perspective that you have access and privilege and power, and that can open doors. You don't necessarily have to give me anything specifically other than your vote, or your, willingness to open an opportunity. And I think we tend to undervalue the power that they have, and they tend to undervalue the influence that we have. Like we look at them and say, we can do it on our own and we'll figure it out, which isn't necessarily the best solution, right? Because we've got all these power brokers. Yep. And then I think the other side is that they can look at folks that are the Black creatives, the Black designers, the Black leaders in organizations and go, well, I think we can still do it without having to necessarily do that work. And so it doesn't feel important. It doesn't feel like I need to focus. And so ultimately we end up in the same kind of cycle, right? Where we want to put on a show that isn't really what's happening on the other side. Yeah. And that's happened historically. Exactly. This is not the first time this has happened in history. It's happened over and over and over again. Exactly. And the crazy part is that we still find ourselves having these conversations. Yeah. And especially when it comes to fashion, the thing that really burns me is that fashion as an industry is supposed to be the most liberal and forward-thinking industry. Yeah, right? Have fun with your clothes. But we're still behind. Absolutely. And the thing that really bothers me is that we act like we're ahead. Oh, yeah. But we're probably the furthest behind. Because we want to tell you who gets to have fun with their clothes and how you get to have fun with your clothes. And if your clothes meet the standard that I've decided they should. And if your identity should be wearing those clothes and all of those things. I love that's. Yeah. All of that's right. So that leads me to, you have worked at some, major fashion houses, but you now have your own brand. You are wearing your brand today. I am wearing your brand today. June 79. Yeah. June 79. I would love for you to talk to me about June 79. And then I'm going to ask you a couple questions about that. Happy to. June 79. Yes. It is a brand that allows people to represent the best version of themselves. That's right. That's what we do. And but I started June 79 because honestly, I think that the world has changed. And, it's funny during, even before the pandemic, you catch yourself, understanding what's happening in the world and looking forward. And I was in this purgatory of understanding, do I want to go back to my old world or what's next for me? I'm on the other side of 40. What does the next part of my life look like, right? Like I've broken down my existence in life in quarters. So like 0 to 20 is Q1, 20 to 40 is Q2. Okay. 40 to
to 60 is Q3 and 60 to 80 is Q4. And if I get to Q,
you
anything
get a
after
little
that is
bonus.
overtime.
You get a little
After
bonus.
80 is overtime.
Okay,
I'm chilling.
all
Right. And so this first half of my life, I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot. I've transitioned from, very humble beginnings to a world that I didn't think that I belong in. But honestly, it's a world that I was probably most comfortable in.
And you've changed
And so, and I've been able to have impact in that,
Absolutely.
right? In this industry and in my own world and even with my own kids and family. And now I'm in Q3 and I was like, all right, halftime's over. Like, what's next? And I thought of all the ideas and how I pushed across ideas forward and the challenges and the pushback that I got. But it made a lot of people money. And so I realized, for me, the world's changing. Do I take this idea to somebody or do I create it myself?
Yeah.
And I was like, if I can endure, I am positive that I can build a brand for the future. And that's what June 79 is about. Because when you think about, how we move from professional to social settings, it vacillates, right? We're in between both. But the old structural norms don't exist. Do I need to wear a suit or a 3-piece suit to a meeting?
Right.
I don't.
Right.
I don't. But I still need to be professional.
Yes.
And I still need to represent myself in a way that allows the message to be as loud as and clear as my appearance.
Yeah.
Right. That I'm about this business,
Right.
that I'm about this world. So I started off in the basement designing, and I wanted something that looked like a suit, but didn't, that felt like a suit, but didn't look like a suit.
Yes.
And so, which we came up with the tagline, pursuit of the unsuit.
Mm-hmm.
But really, all of our fabrics are Italian fabrics, the same fabrics that you would find in suiting.
That's right.
And transition that into what I think is a more comfortable body, our pants. People love our fit because it, even our little cell phone pocket, there's more that's happening. There's functionality, there's fashion, and then there's comfort. I wanted to blend all these worlds together. Everything from tailored clothing to athleisure to sportswear. And we're not streetwear. We are not a streetwear brand. And I say that because when I said, I have a brand, everyone was like, oh, is it streetwear? And so people just assume
stereotype.
That
you're a black man.
Of course, you're black. So
of course. And you're a black man from Brooklyn? Absolutely.
I know. But we're trying to dress people up.
Yeah.
I want people to walk into rooms and people want to know about you.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, he's wearing that logo brand. Oh, we know what he's about.
Yes.
And I think, our society got caught up in lazy luxury, which is a lot of logos. And, if I wear LV on my chest, people think I'm balling. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, that's not what their perceived notion of you is, right? But if you wear, and there's no knock on LV. I just thought about that. No knock on LV. But, if you show up in June 79, people are like, oh, who's that guy? Mm-hmm. I want to know about you and I, or her, And so this brand speaks to that and speaks to not the way in which we dress today, but the way in which, we dress tomorrow. So, yeah.
So what I love about June 79 is that the fabrics are incredible.
Yeah.
This feels, to your point, like a suit. This feels nothing like any, jogging material. And it's layered, it's well lined.
Yeah.
I have an experience with this. What made you decide to take, this is not fabric you would think of for something that is going to be comfortable.
Correct.
What made you decide to say this can be comfortable?
Intentionality, that's all intentional in terms of the product. I wanted it to be, we wanted comfort, we wanted style, we wanted all the different elements that people experience throughout the day to be in your clothing. Mm-hmm. And so there's times that you need to be comfortable. There's times that you need to look great. And there's times that you need functionality. So how do we, we were intentional about that. So for me, it was about working with the best mills, right? That can create fabric that also had a little stretch in it, but also were refined fabrics.
Yeah.
And so once we identified that, it's like, all right, now we know our fabrics. We know what we want to work with. How are we putting it into the product and making sure that everyone that puts this on has the same visceral reaction?
Yeah.
And so, we were intentional about it.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying today's episode of Guilty Privilege. My name is Amber Cabral, and I wanted to share with you that I actually do this for a living. So if you're interested in coaching or training or workshops or even a conversation like this one, you can reach out to me and my team by going to cabralco.com. That website link is in the show notes, and we can work with you to create an experience to bring conversations that are sometimes difficult to have to your workplace or to your team. Now back to the show. Okay, so you've been a leader in big brands, you've created your own brand, you've seen a lot of the fashion world. You also work with a lot of organizations that are focused on trying to, bring in Black talent or highlight, creators of color and all of that. You've lended your voice to lots of conversations in that space. What I would love to kind of hear from you is, what is it that you think is obstructive? Like, what are the mindsets? Because what I would like to address in this podcast is, what potentially are the privileged mindsets that people aren't noticing that are keeping them from engaging, recruiting, finding ways to pull in this vast world of talent that you've been spending lots of time in your career trying to make sure you're supporting and giving visibility to. I've been spending lots of time in my career doing the same in a different industry, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think some of those mindsets are that are getting in the way?
I think it's stereotypes. I think people have stereotypes that just don't allow them to see past certain points of people. When you think of people as a whole, we're not understanding people the right way, especially in fashion. I think that, when I started in this industry, luxury only hired people who were that came in looking posh and things like that, right? But if someone came in just because they couldn't afford what that brand was, doesn't mean that they don't understand how to then be an asset to you as a company.
Right.
Right. And so I think that this kind of old guard mindset is for us to sell people like us, we need to hire people like us. When you don't, what you really need is a very diverse group. If everyone thinks like you, no one's going to think outside the box and allow you to stay relevant. And so, I always say, have the courage to listen to the youth. Yeah. And I remember...
I love that. Have the courage to listen to the youth.
Yeah.
That is it.
Because what you'll learn and what you'll understand, it's kind of like how in the early 2000s when the kids were teaching the grandparents how to use the internet and right?
Absolutely.
They had to listen to them because they didn't know.
They didn't know how.
Or it's like with Facebook. When companies wanted to understand how to use it and advertise on it, it was usually the younger generation that had to explain it to them, right? It's like, oh, we use it for this. We use it to communicate this, ABC, X, Y, and Z. And so I think that, these gatekeepers aren't looking at talent, especially talent of color, and saying, you're very different than anything we have in this office. You belong in this office.
Yeah, I actually have a young person who works for me. She's, I always tease her and say, you're my Gen Zer. I need your opinion because she's young. But she's even said too, repeatedly, I will never work in a corporation. You are the closest I will get to a corporation. So to your point, the mindsets are different. What people are looking for in terms of support is different. The ideas that they're going to bring to what they want the future to look like is different. Oh. And we, of all people, should know they are shaping what's coming because we did it. We shaped, where we are today. And so they're going to shape what's next. And so it is super important if you want to your point, stay relevant, that you are figuring out how to tap into the young folks.
Yeah. And they look at corporations very differently. Like the days of staying 25 years and getting a gold Rolex are over. And they're happy to leave and have 3 jobs in 2 years to get where they're going.
That's right.
That wasn't a case
And their
back
peace
then.
of mind.
Oh, absolutely.
And their self-care.
And and unlimited PTO.
That's it.
Because it's Instagram ain't going to Instagram
remotely.
itself. And I want to work remote.
Yes.
It's all these things that are being asked for, and companies saying, well, we don't want to do it. And okay, that's fine. Then you're not going to have talent in your organization.
You're not going to have the talent. That's 100% it. You're not going to have the talent. And the same goes for attire. So one of the other things I really love about your brand is that, to your point, it is casual, but not, right? It's still very neat. I can go from a thing that is, incredibly professional to something that is very casual. And even with a simple change of shoes, right? I can throw your joggers on with some pumps, or I can put on some sneakers. And I think that we live lives now that want that kind of versatility.
Absolutely. It's funny. I remember staying up late and watching the National Geographic, and it was talking about the Earth and the axis. And if the Earth was 1% off the axis, the entire our weather patterns would completely change.
Oh wow!
Right, just the way certain times of the year where it's warm, or that would change. That's what the pandemic has caused. Right?
Yes.
Our pattern of life has absolutely changed, and so why are we sticking with these these kind of pre-COVID relics of the way we need to show up.
Yeah.
Like for you, like you said, a simple change of shoes. I don't want to feel overdressed or underdressed in any situation that I'm in. I want to be able to go to a meeting that is super business and then turn around and meet my friend for lunch.
Yep.
And then turn around and meet my other friends for drinks in the same outfit and not have to worry about how I look in either one, because I know that I'm dressed appropriately for all of them.
I'm pulled together.
Right? Yeah, for
I'm
all
pulled
of
together.
it. And so,
listen, y'all, if you get a chance, please go out to the June 79 site and check out. I mean, we're going to put in the show notes how to follow Shawn, but I definitely want you to check out the product because it is for men. It is for women. Yep. I've seen women with like this jacket with a cute little bralette top and, the shorts. There's a vibe happening here.
It's a vibe for sure.
It is a vibe. It's a vibe.
We're also sold at Saks too. So shout out to Saks for picking us up. We're in 7 doors at Saks and
one's in Atlanta.
And one is in Atlanta. We're in the Atlanta store, and they've done a great job of promoting and talking to our brand and getting it out there. So, shout out to them, and the stores that carry us too is huge. And so we're excited. We're excited on the journey that we're on, what we're building. It's different. We're not following what the other brands are doing, and we're kind of, paving and defining our own space in fashion.
Yeah, and you deserve that. All right, a couple more questions for you. One, what can we expect next?
Yeah, I am working on, we're wrapping up our spring 24. So that's going to be, it's just, taking it to a whole nother level, just continuing to stay fly.
Okay, I'm ready.
And so I'm excited to kind of show the world our, the things that we have expanded into. Because I think that there's just so much more, like we're barely scratching the surface with the unsuit and really defining this, what I call a tailored casual segment of business.
Yeah.
And then we have some collaborations that we're working on, some sports inspired themes that I'm excited to talk to once the contract is signed.
Okay.
And just building and really, as we continue to build and grow, and I want to find talent out there and bring them into our organization and build with them.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I love that. You always have some quality young folks around you, so I appreciate that
always,
too.
Always.
All right, my last question. This show is called Guilty Privilege because I think people feel guilty about their privilege or they don't know they have it.
Yeah.
And so, privilege is not something that's, really for you to feel bad about, but sometimes we do.
Yeah.
So I would love to know, what privilege do you have that you refuse to feel guilty about?
That I refuse to feel guilty about.
That's right.
Refuse to feel guilty about being smart.
Listen, say more about that, please.
I refuse. People, and in some cases when you're the only person of color in the room, I got challenged on just being smart and being intelligent and being able to articulate myself. And I won't curse, but you'll get a big, F you for even, questioning what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
Because I'm at the table for a reason.
Yeah.
So why question why I'm here versus understanding what I'm bringing to it?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah.
I would also, like to share that sometimes that smart thing is intercultural. Like being the smart Black person among the Black people sometimes can be a little tough.
I mean, it's tough there too.
Yeah.
Even with our own people.
Yeah.
And look, it's funny. I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about like when I first graduated college and I came back home and, the guys I grew up with were just like, yo, you on that side now. And it was like, that old Chris Rock, you get more respect coming out of jail than you do coming home from college.
That's right.
And I felt that. And so, but it's one that at that point I didn't care because the path that I wanted to go down, I knew it looked different than the path that I started on.
Yeah.
And so I was happy to go down that path. I was happy to so, in some cases it'd be your own people. But you feel it more when it's from others.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so
we kind of get it when it's our own people.
We get it.
We
when
don't
it's our
love
own.
it, but we get it.
But we grew up with that, right? Like
right, you know how to navigate it.
Everyone, you know how to navigate it. Everyone's gonna clown each other. Everyone's gonna crack jokes. Right. Everyone's gonna, and you're gonna catch these jokes and you keep it moving.
Yep.
But when it comes from others, it's different because you don't have a right to tell me.
Yes.
That.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have. Yeah. You don't get the grace.
You don't get the grace. You won't catch the smoke.
That's right. Exactly. Well, thank you for coming to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me.
This was fantastic.
Appreciate that. Yeah,
I can't wait
to
to hang out again.
Yeah, we will. We will for sure.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.